Good morning, Sadie. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm not gonna lie. I'm loving the summer weather.
That's awesome. So welcome everybody as the numbers are starting to come in. Lauren is on vacation today. Yes, we let Lauren take a day off. Can you believe that? But we are joined today by my good friend Sadie. I haven't talked with her in a while, so it's so fun to have you on today, Sadie. Thank you.
I'm very excited.
But as the numbers are starting to come in, what I'm going to do is just go through a few things that Lauren normally does. So to everybody, as you probably already know for the frequent flyers, and first of all, I want to welcome all our new people and hope that you become frequent flyers as well. Frequent flyers is the name I give those people that are here week over week. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who joins us. Also, I'd like to mention, as you guys know, I do one-on-ones, and Lauren always puts her email address in the chat if you want to get in touch with me for a one-on-one, and Sadie will be doing that on Lauren's behalf. But I want to say there's a couple frequent flyers that I reached out this week and last week, and we had some conversations, and guess what? We built some Excel documents. I'm sure those that are on all the time aren't surprised on that. So I just want to say that there's some people that reached out and we had great conversation. Please do so. So in that, I just want to remind everybody that put the questions for today in the Q&A. I don't monitor the chat during the show, but I do look at the chat afterwards, as you know, so it's always exciting to see. So if there's anything you want to put in the chat, such as something you want to see in an upcoming show, questions that you have, if you want to get in touch with me, Lauren's email is going to go in there. Also, some of the things I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, the links, Sadie's going to put that in there as well. So Sadie, why don't you go ahead and take it off with the introduction to tell us, what is this SBDC? Who are we and what do we do?
Oh, wow, my pleasure. A little bit of the magic of the SBDC. Well, first of all, who we are. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. We offer no-cost services to the local businesses through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, GoBiz. And where we are. The Los Angeles Regional Small Business Development Center Network serves small businesses throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And what do? Well, we offer no-cost business advising where you can meet one-on-one via phone or Zoom to address your specific needs and challenges. And we also offer virtual training such as these exciting webinars with Lori, where there are comprehensive workshops to help adapt and grow your business. Yay!
Thank you so much, Sadie. I know that Lauren also provided with you with that script, and that was awesome. Okay, guys, just a few things before we get into today's presentation. Let me get to the next one. I wanted to mention some upcoming classes that I have been advertising for some time. Finance session number 1 is an overview of accounting requirements. It talks about what you need for tax, minimum, a little bit about systems. Financial management gets really in depth on the performance measurements and how to analyze if your company is doing well or not. July 7th is a sales tax seminar, which I changed to should you be charging your customer sales tax rather than what you need to know about sales tax, because I'm finding too many people don't realize that they are not charging sales tax when they should be. So Sadie's going to put the links to sign up. These are SBDC classes, no charge to you. She's going to put those in the chat in just a second. Also want to bring up our upcoming shows. Next week, we're going to talk to Sylvia Garcia, is going to tell her about her restaurant. Then Albine, who is also an advisor at the SBDC, is going to discuss sales and marketing techniques to increase your customers. Then I'm going to have a special session with Nate Jemison. I got to type on my information. Nate is on a special section of the SBDC known as the team for access to capital. He is going to come on and talk about kind of what the lending environment is right now. What do you need to know about trying to obtain loans, getting ready, having your financials? Going to be a really good show on that. And then I'm going to follow up with July 13th, a special Ask Lori. You know, we've been doing these Excel documents. I've been teaching you about cost structure. I talk a lot about gross profit margins. I'm going to show you some really cool things and get you a believer on how important gross profit margins are. So that's going to be coming up in just a bit. But for today, I am very excited to have Jeannie on the show today, as she has a truly fascinating story to tell. And I know that there are parts of her story that everybody in the audience can relate to. Jeannie and her husband, Chris, are the former owners of Casa Córdoba Restaurante in Montrose, California. I probably said the name wrong. I'm going to ask her to say it right the minute she comes on. Over the course of the pandemic, Jeannie and Chris, they fought really hard to keep their restaurant afloat. She will share with you the steps they took to not only survive, but then turn the adversity around and then finally decide to sell the company. Now she's currently developing another business called the Spanish Wine Club. So Jeannie's story represents the journey of entrepreneurship on every level imaginable and unimaginable. It is with great excitement that I welcome Jeannie to the show. Yay, Jeannie, I am just so excited to have you on the show. I have been talking about you coming on for some time, and I am just really excited because I feel as though your story embraces every bit about entrepreneurship imaginable, like I said. So let's first start out by correcting me on the proper way to say your restaurant, and then tell us about your restaurant. When did you and Chris begin? Give us some insight about your restaurant.
Okay. The restaurant is called Casa Córdoba. It's named after Cordoba, Spain. My husband and I really enjoyed Spain. That's something that was inside, deep inside, a way to be able to relate. And we wanted to do a business together while we still could. We were both in a position to be able to be able to be an entrepreneur and be able to work for ourselves. And we chose this space. If any of you look online at Casa Córdoba and you see the pictures, we made it look like Spain, and the location was something that spoke to us, and it was the location that kind of inspired us to be able to do it. We had no experience in the restaurant business. We had experience in life and businesses and everything, but I'd say we went into it pretty innocently in terms of not understanding everything that we should have understood at that time. But in the meantime, we developed this restaurant from nothing. It was a bakery at the location, and so it wasn't anything like what you need for a restaurant. And we developed it from the very, very beginning and we opened in January 2013.
Okay, you know, I don't know if I ever knew when you had opened. I knew it had been open for some time because we met, and you'll probably remember the timing more than I, because I feel like it was crazy with the amount of clients I was talking to on a daily basis. But we met pretty early into the beginning of the pandemic. I think it was pretty much the early stages. And at that point, you were struggling with everything that was going on in California, especially. And now anybody that was in California is in California, and that's the bulk of our people. We all know what happened to the restaurants from the fact that we could not go in a restaurant or we had to go to the outdoor seating. I mean, we know that, right? But what was actually happening to the owner, the perspective from an owner, what was going on and the decisions you had to make. That's where yeah, exactly. I know. I feel the same way. I mean, I was in such pain with every company, but the restaurants were hit so hard. So what I'd like to share, and you have such a great story, is take us through what that was like on any level imaginable and unimaginable. Jeannie, what was that time like?
Well, Chris and I had often gone to Spain in order to kind of keep the restaurant current and be able to figure out where we were. We had a lot of support from various people there to kind of help us with our menus and help us really create the Spanish experience. In Southern California, there aren't very many Spanish restaurants, and we really wanted to be very true to the topic. And we had just come back in January 2020. And thinking that we were going to be open. We had our restaurant, everything was looking good, but the winter time for us was always a little bit dicey because we had a very beautiful outdoor patio, but when it rained and it could be a little dicey in terms of the fall off of the clientele at that particular point of time of year. And that was typical for all the years that we were in it. And we were kind of prepared for it, but we weren't prepared for what happened when we came back. But in the meantime, we were going to be opening this section of our restaurant to develop a tapas bar and tapas and wine bar. And we thought that this was going to be really cool, something really different in Los Angeles. People could come to the restaurant or they could go into the tapas and wine bar and and we would teach them about Spanish wines. And we were very, very, very excited to do that. And then we come back in January 2020, and here comes this thing with this virus. And I'm thinking, oh, well, it'll come and go, whatever, I never imagined that within X amount of weeks that we would be totally shut down. March 16th, I will remember that date empirically in my mind, was the date I thought I was going to lose everything I had, my house, my business, everything that I'd worked for my entire life. And I'm not young and I don't have a lot of time to recover from this. I just couldn't believe that this was the state that we were living in, to completely shut down the restaurant. And I thought, well, they said 2 weeks. Well, I figure, okay, 2 weeks. Okay, 2 weeks. And then when I think it became abundantly clear within the next week that it wasn't going to be 2 weeks. And then I realized that we had to deal with the takeout and do all of these kinds of things. But in the meantime, my income went from, my income that wasn't as great in the wintertime, but went down to maybe 15%. And I thought I had rent to pay, bills to pay. I owed like $40,000 to vendors. And how was I going to be able to pay them? How was I going to be able to continue to establish my credit while I was having to face not knowing how long my income was going to be not conceivable to pay for any of my bills.
And if I am correct, I don't know, Jeannie, correct me, your company, your restaurant was not set up to take out. It was not the kind of food that was set up to really function in a takeout capacity.
Correct. We do. Spanish food is not easily as packageable as, say, other types of ethnic types of food. And paella is a very specialized kind of dish. We were kind of a little more, our restaurant was a little more on that scale of an experience, to come in and experience Spain, experience the food, come and enjoy the courtyard, come and enjoy the atmosphere, the fountain and the music and all of that we created. That's not something you can experience by by taking this kind of food out at home and eating it by yourself. So it's not like it was, it's not like it was like a fast food type of experience. And yeah, people still wanted it, but not to the level that it was going to be, that there was any way that it was going to be profitable. No.
And I think that's about when I met you. And I think there was a mixture that was going on of, just as you spoke, this is not going to be good. This is scary. It's going to go on for some time. But then the other aspect, which has always been something I've admired with you, Jeannie, it's the practical. Yes, this is not good, but you also were always hands-on, practical, trying to do whatever you could at the time and just deal with the situation. So from there, once it became evident that this is what I'm going to have to deal with, what are some of the steps that you started taking to try to hang on at that point? I can't say fix yet, really. I would say hang on, unless you want to change that term.
Well, obviously, one of the saddest days of my life was having to tell staff I couldn't afford to pay them. And I didn't know whether there was PPP loans were someplace out in the ether. I didn't know whether I was going to get one, how I was going to get one. And then one of the things too is I did listen. I did all those Zoom. I went to listen to the Zoom meetings because all 100% of us were confused about what to do. And thank goodness I did that, because going to the Pasadena SBDC was basically how I met you. And that was a pivotal point, because I felt that I had a connection outside of myself and my colleagues who were also as fearful as me. We had a little group in Montrose, and our restaurants talked to each other, and we were all very fearful. We all tried to share as much as we possibly could. But again, in the end of the day, you're still by yourself alone making a decision. What am I going to do? And the meeting with getting hooked up with the SBDC started my path on being able to see that there was a possibility, maybe not a certainty, that I would be able to get through. And letting the staff go, I had one person because I didn't need for 15% of my business, I only needed like 1 or 2 people, maybe 2 people on the weekend. And so a couple of my staff decided that they would step up and do it. Some of my staff was terrified and stayed home, and they didn't even want to come back. They were just like terrified because everybody had done a good job of terrifying everybody. And so there were a couple of them that said, you know what, I got to work, I'll do it. And they did. And one of them in particular, one of the employees that I've thanked profusely, saved the restaurant because he put his foot forward and said, I'll do it.
Wow.
My restaurant.
And I also know at that point in time, you and Chris just started doing everything. You started being your staff and working long, horrendous hours, doing absolutely every task imaginable. We're going to elaborate on that because I really want to pay homage to the amount of effort that you guys physically put in, as well as the mental distress during it.
Well, we did everything. We were there on the floor every single day. I couldn't, because of the time period before I started to get some help, some financial help. We had to do 100% of everything. I had to go to Restaurant Depot by myself, pick out whatever it was and pay for it, and put my credit card in and close my eyes and hope that I had enough money in the checking account to pay for it. And every day was like, oh yeah, got through another day. Here we can get through another day and see how we do. It's like rolling the dice every single day. And Chris and I did everything. We cleaned, we kept the bathrooms neat. We did all of especially in those days, you had to be sure everything was really, really clean so that your customers would feel safe when they came in, and even, as best we could. We didn't have any money to pay anybody, for sure. So we had to do it. We did everything. And through that journey of going through the process of the next 2 years, we were on the floor every single day, doing things, making sure that, and watching every single penny so that we could recover. We had the opportunity to recover. If we didn't do that, I don't know if we would have survived, but it was a real journey. And it would be like being at home, and I'd be working at home. Nobody knows what you're doing. Nobody knows, I think, with a restaurant or really any business, your customers only know what they see. They don't know how much work you put in that they don't see.
Right.
And that just compounds the amount of hours that you're doing it. I may say I'm on the floor 12 to 16 hours. I might be there, but in the meantime, I'm waking up in the morning and I'm doing reservations, or I'm paying bills, or I'm on the phone with someone, and it's really, really intense. And I think for anybody who's been in the restaurant business, but really any business, going through this whole process, it was intense, I think, for 100% of everyone concerned. And my heart goes out to everyone who lived through this experience. And I know many of them are still having a hard time. And thank God I got the right help at the right time. And
they are, and that's another reason that I wanted you to be on the show today, Jeannie, is a lot of people are now starting to come to terms with what their cash flow is, not having any new money coming in. And so a lot of people, and I know many of them on the call, are having to kind of face situations. And that's why it was so important for them to hear, your full story. Before we go on, any words that you can share, because I know I would talk with you and things were so difficult, but you managed to every day get up, get a clear focus, and keep trudging away. How did you handle keeping the really hard emotions of fear and anger and frustration under your belt just enough to keep digging in and looking forward? Any kind of thoughts on advice you can share with people on that aspect?
Well, I think before I got before I got my first PPP loan, I thought I had to consider and discuss with my accountant bankruptcy. I really thought that's where I was going to go. And I was pretty convinced that that was going to happen, because if I didn't get this, all I knew was I had signed up for a lease. I had signed up for all these things that I knew weren't going to go away, even if they said this is deferred. It doesn't help to have it deferred, because
Right.
eventually the day comes due where it's not deferred. And so you still have to plan to be able to get there. And so I would say, once I started to get the help, and once the loans started to come in, and I could see that I was going to be able to at least get through the next X amount of weeks, I had to decide, okay, I'm going to have to really, really look very carefully at my finances, because I have to figure out how I'm going to pay back what I owe other people and be able to trudge forward. I was very fortunate that I had a good landlord who did reduce my rent for a period of time, because because I was just lucky. He was a very nice person. Not everybody was in that situation, and a lot of my peers were not in that situation. They was like, I don't care, it's gonna be due, and all of that. But I felt like I just got kind of lucky. But I think you have to decide that you're going to be as positive as you possibly can be, because with the clients, they don't want to hear my problems. Although some of them would come in and ask, and if they asked, I told them. I told them. If anybody came in crabby, I said, this has been the worst nightmare of my entire life. I just want to let you know, I'm still getting up out of bed doing this. So don't be crabby. Okay.
And this is another good time to introduce something that I basically speak on this almost every week. I think I stand on a soapbox and communicate. And that is, Jeannie, the need to have your financials in order, to analyze them, to look at them. When you mentioned about you might file bankruptcy, I think that's when I came on board, because that's when I started looking at the numbers. So the part that I'd like to express, and I'll have you, take from there, is, a lot of these loans, the PPP, the restaurant revitalization, they were not easy and simple to get. Yes, you could file and you could fill out the data, but it took, especially when you got a lot of salaries, you got a lot of numbers, it took really having your numbers together to fill out the forms and to apply and then go through the forgiveness. You had to have your numbers in place. And also, as you pointed out so perfectly, you had to look down the road and say, wait a minute, for the things that are not deferred, I'm going to have to pay these. Am I going to be profitable enough? When am I going to be profitable? So I really urge people to have a solid foundation and understanding of your numbers. I know in your case, whenever I said, Jeannie, I need a spreadsheet that tells me this, I need a spreadsheet that tells me this, I need data, you were able to go to your account and get the data you needed, go get any kind of report. So what can you tell people about the importance of keeping your finances organized in a manner that you understand them and can communicate them?
Well, you helped me quite a bit with that, because you always were able to point me into the direction of what I can do. Now I'm personally, I'm a creative person. I'm kind of this big picture person. I like to look at how things look, or how things should be, and crunching down to little tiny numbers is probably not my strong suit. But as an entrepreneur, must be done, because you can't survive without doing it. And so fortunately, I'm delighted that there are people who do like doing that, like my accountant and my bookkeeper. But obviously I have to be really involved with it, because I have to really understand it.
Right.
And I think through having that good support system, I got really, really good guidance. But still, in the end of the day, I have to make the decision, up or down. Do I continue? Do I not continue? How much do I have to spend this week? How much can I afford? I have to make that decision by my husband and I had to make that decision by ourselves, not because all we could do was the best what we could do. It's really, really important. And you gave me a really good formula too. I think that's going to be in one of your shows. I would encourage all of you to pay really good attention to that, because Lori has a very good way of being able to structure these things so that you really do know where you are and can make better predictions about where you're going to be. But during the pandemic, it was almost impossible, because you didn't know when you were going to open up again. You didn't know what your income was going to be next week, next month. You didn't know. It was just like all big guessing game. And that's what was so scary about the whole thing is, looking back on it, I can see where, that those time periods were whatever they were, but going through it, there was no idea, there was no way to know, day to day.
It was a day by day. I think
Mhm,
once you
mhm.
were able to at least receive one of the loans, I felt as though you got your hands a little bit back on the steering wheel. Before it was just like it was, going out because you didn't know. But then, you were at least allowed to drive through some treacherous area. And at that, you stayed with it. You continued, you plowed through it, you went through everything you needed to. And slowly, but slowly, as the political conditions changed, allowing you to function more and you having your hands on it and making a lot of decisions, you seem to have navigated through it. That's what I saw in lots of work and lots of conversation. But walk us through what that time period was when you were just hanging in there to the point you'd made that big decision. I think we want to sell the business now.
I guess when I was thinking about this to prepare, it's like, I think like every time I thought I was getting through the next level of something else would happen. Every time I thought I had some sort of sense of control over where I was going, the something else would change. The situation would change. And the nightmare of being in the twilight zone continued. One could think, okay, I can survive the twilight zone for 2 weeks, but how long can I continue to do it? And fortunately, I mean, things played in our favor because as I said, I was very fortunate. I got through the SBDC and luckily through even Bank of America was help. They were helpful to me in terms of giving me the resources to help so I could guide it through it. I mean, yeah, I could have wasted it. I could have not managed it well, but I think we did as best we could to manage it, despite not knowing what was going to happen next week. I mean, probably a lot of people remember that the second shutdown happened right before Thanksgiving. A lot of people had already bought all their turkeys. It was crazy.
I remember that, yeah, because you got closed down twice, and then and I remember not the detail like you do, but there was a huge aspect of trying to use your outdoor seating, but not allowed to for certain reasons. And then the rain started. Walk us through that.
Well, health department, we have a courtyard, and our courtyard is a courtyard with walls around it. And so the good news and bad news about it was it keeps it shady most of the time. It's in the shade, and in the summer, most of the time it's cool. You have a nice little breeze through it. But the health department told us that we could not put up a tent, which we had done years past, because it had 3 sides, and we were not allowed to do that. So if I wasn't allowed to have indoor seating and the weather wasn't good, I couldn't have outdoor seating. So just circumstances would shut the restaurant down, not necessarily the rules of this. And so I felt like that was a challenge because people had these parklets and they did whatever, and I couldn't have a parklet because I didn't have the room for it. It was really, really hard. And there were many nights, some in particular, that it would start to, the little mist, the little spitting type of mist, which is the worst when people are eating outside. Well, what are we going to do? We got to get an umbrella. And we're just like flying just to kind of keep our head above water in those days. Torrential rain was easier because you knew what to do.
Right.
The rest of it was like, do you cancel reservations? Do you not? And so anyway, just like kind of slogged our way through it. And it was definitely challenging until we were allowed to have indoor dining. And for our clientele, they were really good. Fortunately, our clientele was very supportive. I mean, it wasn't supportive enough to keep me afloat when I was doing the shutdown, but it were supportive in terms of coming back, and some not being so afraid and being okay with the indoor seating. And so that it sort of slowly evolved back that the people were comfortable in both places. But it was really hard when we didn't have the indoor option at all. And, and I had to be kind of careful not to, what my own personal feelings about it, people were frightened. They truly were frightened. I had one client take a bath in the bathroom. Practically, it was water like all over the place. They were so terrified. This was toward the beginning of when we first reopened, like it was in June of 2020. It was unbelievable how terribly terrified people were, and how my job was to kind of make them feel, if you want to go out, we're here and we're going to make you as comfortable as possible. Because we had to do all that spacing and all the other kinds of things. And a lot of our clients told us that we were the only restaurant they came to because they said they felt safe there. Who knows?
I do remember that. And then I remember there was just a couple calls that we have. I mean, I have to say there's so many times that I would hang up the phone. I'd answered all your questions, but my heart was just still with you on the phone because I was experiencing it with you. And then I remember there was like a conversation saying, we're thinking we might want to sell the company. We're thinking we might. So it was going in your mind for some time until the final statement, we're put the company up for sale. Take us down that road.
Okay. Well, all right. As we had recovered and I was able to pay back my vendors, and my relationships with them picked up as they had been, and people were my vendors were back being supportive of us, and I paid back a lot of my debt, thanks to all of the assistance that I got and guidance that I got. But Chris and I were on the floor for 16 hours a day. And our restaurant was open 6 days a week. And we were open at nights during the week, and on the weekends we were open all day and into the evening. And it was very, very exhausting. And I was feeling like I was going to start to break down physically. But in the meantime, I had to keep doing what I'm doing in order to survive, to be able to figure out how I was going to pay the bills and all of those kinds of things. I couldn't see replacing myself with other people, because I just didn't think it was going to financially be able to turn, considering where I had been. I had been. And so I think that we decided that probably, because we're not young, that we thought it was probably in the best interest of my family that I don't leave my daughter a big fat problem if something were to happen to one of us. And I thought that would become more likely. Well, backing up just a tiny bit, our lease was up last October 2021. And so it was going to be either needing to renegotiate the lease with the landlord, or it was going to be, what are we going to do? And I couldn't see at that point in time, after all we had been through. And also, another part of it is, going to restaurant business, I was rolling the dice every day. You roll the dice and see who's coming in, get your reservations, whatever. You're still rolling the dice every single day. And I didn't think that we were in a position to continue to roll the dice for another 5 to 10 years and put our name on it and sign for it. Because because things are still uncertain. I have a daughter, and she lives in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, and I don't think it would be fair to her if something happened to us that it could ruin and change her life.
Gotcha.
I thought we had to make a decision. If it was just the two of us, we had to make a decision in any case, but we felt that was a smarter decision for us due to the uncertainty. There's still some uncertainty. We just didn't think that we should be continuing to roll the dice like this any longer at our age. So that's when we decided it was in the best interest of the restaurant, which was on its way up. And we were doing okay. We were hanging in there. And we thought it was probably in the best interest of the future for ourselves and for the restaurant and for my daughter that we change that chapter in our life and make it something else.
And you had good timing in that. And one of the things that I get asked a lot, Jeannie, and this is even pre-pandemic, people either are at a point where they're wanting to sell their company, they're thinking, maybe I want to sell the company in a year, or they're getting into it and even thinking, what happens if you want to sell it? The whole concept of getting in a company, people understand that, but getting out of the company is very nebulous. And it's extremely nebulous, I must say, for smaller companies, because when you're dealing with the larger companies and you're dealing with investment bankers and mergers and acquisitions, an area that I've had experience with, there's a whole slew of professional companies that you can purchase from. It costs a lot, but it's a very structured and organized area of selling those type of companies. Selling smaller companies is often challenging because there's not as many available people, and they're not always always that good. I have to say, there's a lot of business brokers out there, but you really have to figure out what you're getting into. And I'm saying from my personal experience, because I've seen people sign up with brokers, it not work, it work. I mean, I always am almost, struggle when people say, I want to sell my company. What do I do? Because I know I'm going to give them certain advice, but I'm going to have to tell them, but be conscious of and understand this as well. So that was my statement, but you went through it, Jeannie. Share with us how you went about, because you successfully sold your company, very successfully. How did you go about that?
Well, when we decided that we were going to explore it, I contacted a broker, and then I interviewed the broker, and she gave me some profiles about taking a look at my financials and taking a look at the business, and then trying to tell me what she thought the value was going to be, and so that I would have an expectation before I signed the dotted line of what I wanted to get out of it. But I think one of the harder things is if you're into the business, and this has been your business for a long time, like Casa has been our business for a long time, and it's deep inside and very passionate. It's very personal, and it's so different than selling a house. It's not the same at all. Becomes very personal and either like somebody goes, do they want it as it is? Are they going to want to continue to do it in the same light you're going to do it? Are they going to completely change the concept? And do you care? Does it matter? What are your clientele going to do? What is your staff going to do? Yeah. And we were so fortunate. The staff that we developed at Casa were amazing. When they came back, they were wonderful. I was so lucky. That was another portion of it, that the staff was really very, I wouldn't say dedicated to the restaurant, but they were dedicated to the fact that they wanted it to work. And so all of those things are weighing on me, like how I'm kind of balancing out. And what about their jobs? What am I doing? They're depending. I feel like dependent children in a way, not that they're children, but right. I feel like that this is a big part of their life, and I felt responsible. Obviously you're responsible.
The business, you sell a house, you got the people living in the house, and when you sell a business, like you said, you've got all these stakeholders down to the client, the community. It has a lot of people involved.
There's a lot of aspects. It's not just, and so what's it going to look like when you do that, and who's going to be there, and what's it going to look like, and what's your life going to look like on the other side of it? Yeah. It's really going through this door it's a serious life change, not just for yourself, but for everybody else who's involved with the restaurant, clients, employees, the people, the area that you're in. It's a huge adjustment. So it's really scary to go through that door, because you don't know you don't know how your life is going to look like on the other side, which I'm just experiencing now. It has to take a little time for an adjustment. But the broker was good. I think things that I learned. Your brokers, unlike dealing with a house, the broker does not necessarily come and interlude into when somebody's going to come and look at your restaurant. Yeah, they have to sign an NDA, okay, but you may be meeting these people on your own, by yourself, and you're thinking, okay, I have no idea what they're going to ask me. I have no idea. There's no ground rules here. Right. Okay. And okay, how much do I trust somebody that I've met 1 second to tell them everything that I think that they should know if they're really going to be seriously considering it? And then how serious are they going to be once you start to partially unload these things, and they're walking away with it's not your trade secrets, but the way that you manage things. And what are they going to do with that? And does it mean anything? And it's painful every single time that you meet somebody and think, well, what are they going to do? Because my restaurant, and like a lot of people's businesses, it's something inside your heart that you're going to entrust to someone else at some point in time, and hope that they have the same mindset to take good care of it and be good stewards to your concept that you may have developed all by yourself. And you watch this concept grow, and are they going to be good stewards to your business? No matter, and the money, you want to get paid, but leaving the legacy and the good stewards to the business and taking care of it, that was really tantamount to how I felt about this transition.
And having the
it mattered to me.
and having the financials intact was ultimately very important at this point.
Well, yes, because they're going through your financials with a, the fine tooth comb, because they're going to see whether they're I mean, it's like anybody else wants to see what's under the hood, like Elon Musk, everybody wants to see what's under the hood because that's going to be what they're going to be left with. And I wanted to be sure that I had, and anyway, all of that had to be done. And I got a lot of help getting that done because they really wanted to see a whole lot of things. And I didn't particularly want to turn over, like opening up every single thing that I had, because I mean, it's very, very personal. And, but we did.
And it's the experience, I know, and you're, because you're living it, it was quite some time, but my experience, I was actually surprised. I thought you found a good buyer in a relatively short period of time. I know it was long on your end, but I've seen people go years through this process. So then you finally found somebody that, it looked like it worked. You went through the due diligence. What did that look like? People always wonder, what does the due diligence look like when you're in the process of communicating with a buyer?
Well, after in the case of the people who bought Casa Córdoba, they had a period of due diligence, and when they signed up, they had to do the due diligence, and they asked me for my financials, my tax records for the last couple of years, and in the sales and all of those things. And so I didn't know how many reports I had to do, but I had to do a lot of reports so that they could understand what it was going to be like for them to take it over financially. Am I answering the question? Okay.
It's very time consuming, isn't it?
It was very, very time consuming, and I sat with them for times and prepared the reports. And I tried to give them as much information as I possibly could, because, and in the end of it all, I mean, I'm going to walk away from it, but in order for me to make this go forward, it had to make sense. It had to make sense to them, and I tried to do everything I could to have it make sense to them. And these particular people wanted to keep the concept. They wanted to keep it as it is. They liked what we had done, and they wanted to keep it as pretty much as it could possibly be the same. It's not going to be the same because Chris and I were on the floor all the time, and they're going to see other people on the floor. But in order to keep the concept and the feeling the same, that's what they wanted to do. And I felt very fortunate, again, that we were able to find these people who were interested in it, wanted to do that. And I did. That was just lucky, because I had some other people look at it that wanted to do something totally different with it. And that would have been, and change the name. And that would have been a little sad for me. But in the end, I knew I had to walk through the door, because one way or another, I had to make that change.
And it was during this time period that I learned something that I've been wanting to know for some time. You might know where I'm going with this. It has to do with the EIDL loan. And when, I had been involved in the so-called expert on these products, but I didn't have a direct connect to the SBA that I can call up and go, hey, what happens when this happens? I had to go through a lot of their legislation and stuff. And I had been wondering for some time, if somebody sells the company and the EIDL loan is still in existence, how is that going to be treated by the SBA? And of course, that was one of the questions that you had. I was able to go through the SBDC, the higher up at the lead center, and get a phone number for a task force at the SBA to specifically discuss that. That's where I got that number from you. But what I learned during that process is that if you are considering any aspect of anything that changes the EIDL loan's future, it could be selling the company, closing it down, you have to get on that phone and call the SBA and discuss that sooner than later, which I'd always said, but you were the very first person that actually I walked through that experience with. I've had others, but I knew, I've been aware of it at the beginning, but I knew there was a matter of time somebody was going to go through this experience, and I was going to see what is the truth, how is it actually handled at the end. And what we learned is it's not an easy process to just transfer it to somebody else. You ultimately remain responsible. And so what I learned from that, which I communicated, is if you're planning on doing any changes within your company and you have an EIDL loan, pretty much plan on trying to take care of that up front. Anything you would want to add?
Yeah, I learned, well, I mean, basically going through it with you, the people who wanted to buy the restaurant and had put in, and were going forward with the process, wanted to take over my my EIDL loan. I had, and it sounded like, okay, it's okay with me, But I found out when I called the SBA, I found out that I actually really had a counselor, a real person that was real assigned to me. I didn't know that until I called them and found out. And he said to me, pay it back. And that was the end. And it was like, it wasn't like, there was no other way to take this conversation. He said, you read it. He says, you are responsible for that loan until it is paid back, whether you give it to somebody else or not. If they default, guess what? Pay it back.
Okay, yeah, that was very good sound advice.
That was the EIDL loan. The other loans, the SBA loans may work differently, but this is how I found out that the EIDL loan worked. And so this is one way that one could get oneself in trouble, is if one got an EIDL loan and had spent all that money and then had to pay it back and wanted to sell their business. That could be a really, really big problem if you can't pay it back. And I never spent the money. I took the loan because I wasn't sure, with all the uncertainty, who knew what was going to happen? I didn't know, my husband and I didn't know whether or not we were going to need that money someday for some unforeseen things, because everything that happened to us was unforeseen. So, but thank goodness we hadn't spent it. And it did cost us money to retire it, because there was interest paid on it that we paid off early, but it was a lump sum. They told us how much it was, and it was done.
Yes.
If I hadn't had that, I don't think I could have sold my business. I think I would have been in trouble.
And, this was something, like I said, from day one of taking out the EIDL loan, I kept wondering, what is it actually going to be when it comes to fruition? And this is something I speak on a lot now, because these loans are 30 years. There's a lot of things that can happen to companies over 30 years, and people need to really understand the impact. So thanks for sharing that. So now
I had to make the payments. I started to have to make the payments. I'm starting to make the payments on it like a year before, like June 2021 was the one I had to make the first payment on it. So I was making my payments because God knows I didn't want to have bad credit if I could possibly help it. But anyway, that could have been a really big, if I had decided to use that money to like spend on the restaurant or the patio or whatever it was, I don't know how I would have gotten it back unless I'd worked another 10 years.
Yeah, I agree. I really think, in my perspective of watching you go through this, I mean, you went through horrific times, just one after another, but it was your due diligence, your persistence, your staying on top of things, being detail oriented, not taking and burying your head in the sand, but literally attaching and each thing and saying, or I should say attacking, what I meant to say is each situation and doing the best you can. So in the end, you sell the company. The last signatures are done. The company is sold. So walk us through two things. First of all, because this is turning into, it is a positive story throughout, because I think it's something that every entrepreneur on some degree, hopefully never to this degree, experiences. But there's also such a cool ending. There's the selling of the company, and then there's where you and Chris are going next. So walk us through that, Jeannie.
One thing I wanted to just add to the selling of the business is something that you have to think about is how the assets are going to be. It was an asset sale, so how the assets are going to be broken down. Be sure, if you go through this, work really closely with your accountant or a person like Lori, so that you understand how it's going to affect. Every single situation affects you differently tax-wise, and it affects the buyers tax-wise as well. You have to have a meeting of the minds with the buyers in order to go through that final door of how you're going to split, how you're going to have to report your asset sales, and how it's going to affect you financially. Not because I still have to pay my 2022 taxes based on it. I still have the restaurant in 2022 for a period of time, and all of these things will affect the final outcome. So I think work really, and I was very blessed to be able to, that the buyers of the restaurant were really lovely people. And that was another fortunate thing that happened. And so we were able to work together through it very well with a very open discussion, and to find out what was best for both of us. And I feel very grateful for that, because it's not always the case that you're going to have a meeting of the minds as you're having to go through these finances that affect both sides of the equation, affects them and affects you. And you have to have an agreement, because that's what you have to do.
A lot of people don't understand that sales and stuff is what's called in tax terms a taxing event. And they don't realize that that is going to create a capital gain, possibly, which is taxed at a higher amount, et cetera. So I'm glad you brought up the tax aspect. I didn't even think to ask on that, Jeannie, but that is such a solid point to make.
But it was really, really important because it has to do with the closing of your sales tax accounts, and your everything is related in terms of how it's going to affect you. And then the buyer, it affects them too. It affects them in maybe their own way that is completely unrelated, because their tax situation is not going to be the same as mine for sure. And so being able to have, I would say, I think the most important thing when you have if you're going to sell your business, is you have to try to create a really good relationship with the buyer, because you have to make joint decisions together in order to go through that door, so that both parties feel whole on the other side. It's really, really important. So
very, very true.
You don't want to have, you don't want to go through with regrets, and I didn't want them to go through with any regrets. And God knows I want them to be as successful as possible, because that was my baby.
Right.
It was my baby. I never got to see the bar open. I never got to finish some of the ideas that I wanted to do. And God bless them. I hope that they're able to do it and to the best of their ability. But I'm here. I haven't moved away. I'm here. And but you have to walk through that door together.
Yeah, makes sense. So tell us about the baby.
The baby?
Your new baby, your new one.
Oh, my new baby. We're going to.
You can't keep them down long, okay? You just can't keep them down long. Let's hear about the new baby, Jeannie.
Okay, it's so funny too, because my life was going at 150 miles an hour every day, all day long, 7 days a week. 365 days a year, and then you sell the restaurant, and whew, your life goes down to 5 or 10 miles an hour. I make overnight. You go, whew, even though I was still doing things and all of that. And so I have the energy. It's not like I feel like I can't do it. I have the energy. My husband and I have the energy to go to take that energy that we had at Casa and be able to do something else. And so we were interested, obviously, in Spain. That's been our passion. And I learned a lot about Spanish wines. I've been to a lot of the Spanish vineyards. And so we've decided to develop a business called the Spanish Wine Club. It's still in development, shall we say, but we hope to be able to do wine tastings at various places with Spanish wines. And through one or so of my contacts, we're looking at trying to develop trips and to take people to Spain and take them through the Spanish vineyards and create a nice experience for them, as learning and fun. Because we have the contacts, we just have to kind of be able to put it all together and be able to see that and share that kind of experience with people who enjoy Spain and enjoy Spanish wines, whether it's been in California or wherever we go, or in Spain.
You know what I love about the story? You're still involved in Spain and Spanish culture. You're involved in the wine aspect of area you did not get to open, with your restaurant, an area you did not get to pursue, right? So you have that, but you also, me being the always finance business person, Jeannie, I love flexibility. I don't like brick and mortar as much in these times because they scare me with leases, right? You've got a business that can morph into what it needs to be and what it has to possibly be. So I have a funny feeling that when not if, but when I invite you back in a couple years, you're going to be talking all about the Spanish Wine Club and what you're doing and where you went. And then I bet you there's going to be a point in time where you're going to say, the best thing that ever happened to me was forcing me to get into this. On that, it's an interesting note. So back in history, you know me from, being a advisor through the SBDC, and as many people know as well, as I've always had my consulting firm, and many people know that's called Business Simply Put. And I'm only bringing this up for an interesting story. Back in the day, and where I know all the information I know, is I did high-level turnarounds in consulting, and Jeannie, you know that to be true, right? And I had a big consulting firm in LA, and it was called LW and Associates. I don't even talk about this anymore. This has been decades ago, right? So I came up with the concept of Business Simply Put in 2007. And the reason is I was being interviewed on a big radio show, and I had just written my first finance books, and I didn't want to use my LW and Associates consulting firm brand name because it would be, are you an author or a consultant? I didn't want to create confusion, just to give you the background on this, right? I walked into, I have to back up. I didn't know how to mix the two. So I had a business card that on one side said LW and Associates, but the other side had Business Simply Put, where to buy my books and stuff, right? So this is going to make sense why I even troubled everybody with this story. I walked into a restaurant to meet a longtime friend of mine, and I showed him my card, which he's seen a million times. I flipped over the back of it to say, look, I'm real passionate about this. This is going to reach out to small companies. I want to work with the small company again. I want to give advice to the small company. I want to write to the small company. Everything was, I want to be around the small company again, right? So I'm going to have this as a division so I can at least experience it. He took that business card and he said, I bet you someday that is going to be the front of your business card. And I thought, there's no way, because here the LW Associates was making my money. How was I ever going to do this? And look at now, it's all history. So I think you're going to have the wine club be the front of your business card in a way like you've never expected.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the vote of confidence. I'm sure I will be in touch with you as I move forward, getting it all set, because it's another business. Businesses have a life, have a life be outside of you. You give them birth, they have a life, So
they do. And then I want to answer one question for Rosemary. Rosemary was asking about the financial formula that we were talking about and how you could know about it. And so, Rosemary, I speak on it quite a bit. You have a couple options. One is the finance class, and Sadie put the links in, especially level 2. I start talking about the cost structure and how to use it to manage your company. Also, Sadie put in past events. You'll see Ask Lori. I'm always doing Excel formulas and discussing it. You'll get information there. Third, Sadie also put Lauren's email. If you want a one-on-one with me where I can go over your numbers and teach you it in more detail, it's not just a formula, it's a process is what it is. And so that you can get in touch with me and we can schedule a one-on-one. So Rosemary, that's your answer on that one. So Jeannie, I know, and I want to thank you so much, and thank you to the audience for being here today. I know bringing you on was kind of going through a very long and involved story, but I thought it was just so important to be told because it just carried so much information, inspiration, diligence, understanding financials, digging through things you're not really familiar with and have to become a self-proclaimed expert overnight suddenly, dealing through adversity, coming out on top and keeping yourself whole so you have within you to take on the next step. It's a fabulous, fascinating story, Jeannie, and it's one of the, in my mind, it is one of the survivor stories of the pandemic. It is a story, it's a novel, it drives you through it, it tells you about it. I guess I know because I've lived it with you, I had the emotion with you as well, but I know it was a challenge to come out and talk about everything, and I just want to say my heart goes out as a sincere thank you for coming on the show today and sharing your story with our guests. And I'll tell you, in the chat, I'm getting congratulations on your success. Thank you for sharing. Like I said, the chat is always going crazy with comments. I don't watch it completely, but I do see things, and we're getting a lot of response from the viewers of saying thank you for sharing it. So I can't say enough, and I look forward to doing a ton of financial models, however many you need on your new company to make this be the dream that you and Chris have. So my heart goes out to you, my skill level goes to you, and I just wish you all the success in the world.
Well, thank you, Lori. And I'd say I owe you a great deal of gratitude. I don't know that I would be here without you and without the support of the SBDC. I don't know, because there was so much we had to navigate together that we all learned. And my heart goes out to you. And if I, in a small way, if I can repay the things, the good things that have happened to me, that's what I would do. And I would do anything to repay that, Lori. Thank you so much for everything you did.
No, you're more than welcome. Going back to my story about the other side of the, front of my business card, I really am fortunate because I come from, I always tell people, frequent flyers know this about me. I came from the country. I came from a small little country. I call it my little village. And then I went into the big city and I got all educated and stuff, right? But my heart is with the small company, and it will be till I die. And I am thankful to the SBDC that I get the opportunity to come back and help the people with my level of knowledge that mean the most to me. So it's a complete win-win. So Sadie, with that, let's bring the SBDC back on.
I'm just riveted by everything. Are we like at little tears level when we start applauding? I'm just like, oh, it's such a great story. I was riveted, literally riveted.
Isn't it, Sadie? Isn't it an incredible story of perseverance? Isn't it? I know I talk about you like you're not sitting right here now, Jean, but I can't tell you. I have such great appreciation and respect for you and Chris. Had Chris on the phone many times as we talked to. Just great appreciation and respect for everything that you went through and everything you did.
Well,
I know, we're all like that. We're just like, wow.
Well, with that, Sadie, Jeannie and I are going to take off. We're going to let you hang behind in case anybody else has any other comments in the chat. Once again, guys, I read the chat. If you want to get in touch with me, Lauren's email's there, or put it in the chat. I'll see it. If you have any comments about upcoming shows, questions, anything, I always review the chat a few days later. So till next week, when we're going to hear another exciting story, Jeannie, thank you. And Sadie, so wonderful to see you. And whenever Lauren's out, I get to see you, and it's so great to do so. I always love seeing your happy face.
Well, I love being with you guys and hearing all these great stories and just the great help work that we do at the SBDC. It reminds us why we're all in this together.
That is a perfect way for us to leave. Bye, Jeannie. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, folks, so if you're still here, I'm going to drop down some more links because you know how it is with the chat window. Things just go up and down. So we just definitely want to make sure that you have all that information that you need. So let me just break these down into little chunks for you again. But still, I'm just on that story, right? Wow. But yeah, that is the work that we do at the SBDC. So please reach out to us. As you can tell, we are here to help you. We care. We are vested. We want to make sure that you succeed. We got a lot of great resources for you. We got a lot of great content for you to watch because, sometimes you just do need to hear from other entrepreneurs like yourself where, you're just like, wow, like what else can I learn? What other motivational advice, what kind of just information is there to learn? So I'm just going to be dropping down things because yes, you can watch a bunch of our YouTube videos from previous SmallBiz Talks that we have had with Lori. So let me just drop that in there for you. As you can see in the chat window, I am dropping down links, info, because after listening to that great story right there, I know that we want to say, Lori, how do I get in touch? How do I become a client of the SBDC? Well, I am dropping down all that information for you again. So let me just get that in there. I have everything put in. I'm checking the chat window. Let me see. Okay, yes, there we go. Let's see, dropping info in there. I do believe that recorded versions go out, but that is a Lauren question, unfortunately. But you know what, asking for recorded versions, you can also check our YouTube channel. I believe that is where that will have that information for you. So if you look at the bubbles, I said if you want to submit questions or suggestions, there's a link there. For someone that we have asking about the recordings, we actually have a YouTube channel. Yes, everyone's on YouTube now. So check out our YouTube channel. You can see all our past recordings on there. And then this recording will go up there. So there's the YouTube channel link. If you want to connect with your local SBD center, call. You have the numbers there. We have the URL for you to sign up. And if you want to connect with Lori directly, I have Lauren's email address up there, and she will be able to get you coordinated, get you in touch with Lori. And then of course, our favorite, if you are not an SBDC client, there is the link, because after listening to that, yes, you definitely want to get in touch with the SBDC because we are here to help. I'm going to be checking the Q&A. I see that there is a formula question out there. So I'm saying, let us reach out to Lauren, and she is going to get you Lori's information and that handy dandy formula link in there for you. So I just dropped Lauren's email address out there if you want to get the formula that Jeannie spoke about. So dropping that in there. I'm just going to hang tight here for a couple of seconds, check that chat window, but I do believe that all our questions have been answered. Where to see past recordings and recordings that just in general. Gosh, okay, so I'm going to give everyone a couple of seconds here because I know there's lots of links to look through, click on. So if you want to make sure that you have all the info, I'm going to leave that up there for a second. I'm going to mute myself, and if you need any additional information, please send me a chat message or a Q&A, and I will get you into the right direction. All right, folks, just checking in, seeing if everyone's been able to get that information. I mean, right, listening to that story, we're just like, wow. So yes, so definitely to go through the chat, scroll, get all the information. I want to make sure that you have all the URLs. So I'm just going to hang tight for a couple of seconds here. So I still see that we have a couple of people here, and I want to make sure that you get all the information that you need. So please scroll, check all the links, look at all the informational resources we have available for you, and definitely reach out because we are here to help you at the SBDC. All right, folks, I'm getting ready to head out, but we do have those last couple little windows going there for you. So just anyone has any questions, let me know. I do see our participant list dropping, but please do a little screen grab. Maybe I'll do a manual copy and paste for some of those. I do believe that there is a little, if you hover your mouse over to the right of a bubble, a little bubble that you want to get in particular, you see 3 little dots pop up. If you hover to the right side of those bubbles, you will see 3 dots. Click on that and a little copy window will come up if that is what you need to do, because yes, there's a lot of information to copy. So I'm getting ready to close down the Zoom. So please, the last couple of seconds there, get all the info that you need, and we will be saying we'll talk to you soon, okay? Have a wonderful day. I enjoyed spending all my time with you over here. I learned so much, and I cannot wait till see you guys again soon. Have an amazing day, have an amazing rest of the week, and we'll see you soon, okay? Bye.